Welcome back, my erudite friends, to another edition of MonteCristo's Overwatch League Power Rankings, the Thinking Fans Power Rankings. Today we are going to be looking at the number 20 through number 11 team after 1 week of competition here in Stage 2. Now, we're not going to talk about teams' previous rankings for last stage because a lot has changed, obviously, with the shifts to the metagame and recent results. So we will be looking starting at number 20 with, of course, the Los Angeles Valiant. Some of you may be thinking, well, the Los Angeles Valiant had a very tough first week of competition up against the San Francisco Shock, but I'm still not sure the Valiant are going to be any better within this meta. With the coaching change over to the Valiant, with Moon getting removed from the roster and packing 10 now as a temporary stand-in at the head coach position while they look for a replacement or looking to make that change permanent, I think they're a little bit leaderless right now, and I'm still not convinced that they have the DPS talent necessary in order to climb in a meta that should be even more DPS reliant. We will see how they do against weaker opponents. Obviously, playing against a team that was in the stage finals last time is a tough challenge while they are struggling. Coming in at number 19 will be the Florida Mayhem. Florida made a lot of decisions over the break, including to go with an all-Korean roster, and while I do believe that Florida is going to add additional Korean players, and we better hope they do, because at certain positions, particularly their tank line of Swan and Zephyr, seems very underwhelming currently, but even though they did manage to take a map off of the London Spitfire, which I admit was somewhat impressive, I'm still not thinking that this team is going to be very good up until they make either some more roster changes or gel with their current roster as it is. So I hope that they're going to make further additions to their team down the line, and maybe at that point we can start considering them as a better ranked team than second worst in the league. At 18 is going to be the Washington Justice. Now, the meta change actually does look like it has done the Washington Justice some favors, including they were able to take a map off of Toronto this past week and the Chengdu Hunters, as well as play a close series, including some almost full holds, I should say, because Chengdu won some of those maps, like on King's Row, but they do look better, and I think their ability to have Corey play a Widowmaker role is something that is going to be beneficial for them. So it looks like the transition may be helping them in the long run because they can rely on some individual playmaking out of their DPS roles. So Washington Justice, at least looking improved, you have to say, able to snag a couple maps here and there. And so that will be putting them at number 18. Now, at number 17. I know many fans will be disappointed by this, but we're going to be putting the Atlanta Reign here. And I don't think this is going to be a permanent slip for them, but just in terms of form right now, they have been a bit on the weaker side. They should have been able to close out a series against the Boston Uprising, but found themselves reverse swept. So at least they looked, pretty good at the start of that series, using some Maywalls and interesting strategies to divide the Boston Uprising roster. But Boston was also integrating a new player in the same way the Atlanta Reign was, and they were unable to close out that series. And then they got really smashed by London. Keep in mind that Baby Bay only had a couple of days to start practicing with the team before they went right into Stage 2. A big question on my mind is, where is Dako, considering that he was a very good flex tank that has now been replaced so far in Stage 2 by the new Contenders player FRD. I do think this is a roster with talent still, but especially that London game where they got really wrecked means that they are going to be moving down until they fix some of their synergy issues. And number 16 will be the Guangzhou Charge. Now, this is a team that we thought was going to do very well in this meta, but has yet to even win a map here in this stage. We don't weight what happened last stage too heavily, but they've only won one map in their last 4 series. Now, bear in mind that their last 2 series of last stage were against the Gladiators, who were looking very good at the end, as well as the Titans, the eventual Stage 1 champions, and one of their matches this week was against the San Francisco Shock. So these are all matches which we might expect the Guangzhou Charge to lose, but we expected them to at least look better coming in when they could actually use 3 DPS looks more effectively, considering the frequency in which they use 3 DPS heroes on maps throughout the last stage. They look very uncoordinated right now, and the big glaring asterisk next to this ranking is that they lost all 4 maps to the Paris Eternal, and while Paris looked good, Paris also got destroyed by the Chengdu Hunters later in the week. So right now, Paris is still pretty inconsistent. They're either, 4-0ing or getting absolutely dumpstered in their matches, and Guangzhou has just been struggling to even take a map at this point in time. So it really seems like their coordination on the whole is lacking. And so this team needs to get it together and play more as a unit to take advantage of the skill players that they have in those DPS positions. At number 15 is going to be the Hangzhou Spark. This is another team that we thought might be benefiting from a change in meta, but they look just ridiculously uncoordinated right now. Even though Gushui is there to make plays and sometimes really pull them out of the fire, they did lose their initial game 4-0 to the Vancouver Titans. Now, they did play a very strong opponent, obviously, but it was mostly their form that we're going to be judging here, because many teams will lose 4-0 to the Vancouver Titans, but many teams will not look quite as bad as the Hangzhou Spark while doing it. There was a brief flicker of success on King's Row, where they had a very effective attack by punishing a death by Hawksaw all the way through the map, and you think, wow, this team looks really good, but then they give up the fastest time ever to the Vancouver Titans on their attack on King's Row and can't do anything in Time Bank. So when they're on, they look really good, but that happens way too far and few between, or few and far between, we should say. And number 14 is going to be the Paris Eternal. Paris looked very good against the Guangzhou Charge with their new roster, but again, this is a Charge team that seems sort of on the down and out right now. I do think that Paris using Cloudy and bringing Gray into the starting lineup, starting to play Danya as well, has been beneficial for them. It seems like they are more comfortable in this meta than we saw them at the end of last stage in the overall GOATS meta, but we still need a little bit more data, especially because they really just couldn't hang with the Chengdu Hunters whatsoever in that second match of the week. So Paris Eternal, middle of the pack team right now, on the lower end, just because we haven't been impressed by Guangzhou, and big loss to the Hunters. At number 13, now this is a team we haven't seen play yet, and this is a team that may actually exit week 2 not having won a map, and that's the Houston Outlaws, and that's because they play the Vancouver Titans in their next match. However, I do have optimism that this is going to be a much better meta for Houston. Obviously, with Dante and Linkser, they do have some good DPS options, and I think that this meta in particular will be able to show some of their individual strengths, and we have seen last stage Houston be successful on some control maps when they can run multi-DPS looks. Hard to judge at this point in time. A lot of their next ranking will depend on the Vancouver Titans and how that match goes and their form going into that game. At number 12 is an 0-2 team. It's the Shanghai Dragons. And a lot of people are still have in their minds that these are the Shanghai Dragons of last season. But this is a team that obviously has virtually an entirely different roster of players, and that is going to have a bit of a difficult schedule. Bear in mind that they did lose twice this week, but 2 of those losses were to the Gladiators and the NYXL, 2 of the most difficult teams to play in the league right now. So these are matches we would have expected them to lose coming in. And even coming up in their next couple of matches, Shanghai is going to play the Chengdu Hunters, another team that should beat Shanghai. But where we are going to learn a lot about Shanghai is when they play later on against some of the lower tier teams, the Houston Outlaws, the Florida Mayhem, the Washington Justice. These are all winnable matches for them. And I think Shanghai could realistically finish 3-4, maybe if they're lucky, 4-3 this stage. And so they've sort of cemented themselves as a middle of the pack team. And They took a map off the Gladiators, drew one against NYXL. The games weren't terribly close, but they were closer than a lot of mid-table teams facing against top-table teams. So that's why the Shanghai Dragons are going to be here at 12. And to finish up this section of the power rankings is going to be another team that we haven't seen play quite yet at this stage, and that is the Dallas Fuel. Now, we don't know how Note is integrating into the Dallas Fuel at the given time, considering we haven't seen their matches. But Dallas, like Houston, is going to have an advantage in that they had a week off of competition in week 1 to scout the other teams, see how they're playing, get more comfortable with the meta. And they have enough flexibility at their DPS position that losing RCK's Sombra I don't think is going to hurt them. AKM was playing a good Sombra, Zachary can also play Sombra, but getting an upgrade at the Diva position I do think is important for Dallas because they have the flexibility elsewhere. Boston needed the flexibility at the off-tank position. Dallas just needed a really solid Diva to shore up what is a strong, I think, DPS core on the Fuel roster. So if they're able to integrate with Note, I think this is a team that, I'm placing 11th right now, but definitely could go higher as the stage progresses. Thank you very much for watching these power rankings. Stay tuned for number 10 to number 1.